I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will move on into the consensus agenda.
I move that we approve the vouchers and payrolls in the amount of $830,896.24. Also the minutes from our last 2 meetings.
Second.
Been moved by Steve, seconded by Kevin. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0. Patrons' comments. This is your time to shine, girls. Any comments?
What the heck just happened?
Okay, a consensus agenda is like the pre-made normal stuff we do. We approved all the monies that Tom has put together to pay all the vendors, and we've approved the minutes from the last 2 meetings. So we had minutes from the September meeting and minutes from a meeting a week ago? A week ago. So that's
plus the 2 payrolls that were
yes.
paid in that since our last meeting.
Okay.
It's exciting.
Any other questions? Okay, we will move on to personnel.
All right, for agenda items number 4, I recommend the personnel agenda. We'll go ahead and go through each one of those just for clarity's sake. So I recommend the approval of Amanda Shively as the elementary cafeteria dishwasher.
So moved.
Second.
So moved by Steve, seconded by Wes. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
I also recommend the approval of Nancy Miller as a full-time custodian at the high school. She has been working the entire year. It's just when she worked in the previous position, she was a part-time employee. So we just want to make that official that we understand that that's a full-time custodian now. Just doing an amazing job. So please approve her.
Is she qualified to be around young and fresh?
She is qualified and she is making a difference despite exterior motives. Or exterior.
I hope she's recruiting from our country. I move that we approve.
The move by Steve, second by Wes. Are you?
I don't think I'm not.
You're not. Okay. So all in favor, and Ken will abstain.
We have to
Recuse himself. That's correct. Yes, we have those words.
All right, I'm going to attach the next 5 together here. So I'm going to recommend the approval of Bart Christian for 5th grade boys basketball, Greg Christian, his father, as a volunteer coach, Mr. Steve Duff for 8th grade basketball, Kyle Bell for 7th grade boys basketball, and Zach Schaefer for 6th grade boys basketball. So
you have to lump them all together so we won't argue about Steve Duff. Just kidding.
He's probably
yes.
I move that we approve.
Second.
The move by Ken, seconded by Steve. Any other discussion?
We can discuss that.
All in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
All right. I recommend the approval of Justina Faulkner for the varsity cross-country coach in Joe White's absence because of surgery and some health concerns. Joe just said, you know what, she's there, she's acting as the coach, she deserves to get that pay. So I don't want to say it's a formality, but obviously that season is coming very, very close to an end. But just to give her the rightful pay for stepping in and being the coach.
I move we approve that.
Second.
Been moved by Steve, seconded by Wes. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
All right, next I recommend the approval of Jason Lemler for the junior high football assistant coach. Once again, they have a game tomorrow, and they are done. But that,
Not, yeah,
yeah, the other one.
the other one.
The one I
So,
graduated with.
Yeah.
yeah,
Has he been doing this all along?
yes.
Yes.
I move we approve that.
Second.
I'll pick Kevin this time.
Can beat it.
He did.
The move by Steve, seconded by Kevin. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
I recommend the approval of Mrs. Arvison's maternity leave from 12/14 to March 18th of 2021.
Per her request.
I move we approve the maternity leave.
Second.
Been moved by Steve, moved by Wes, second by Steve. All in favor?
Get her through up to spring break, is that what that is?
Correct.
All in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
I recommend the approval of the collective bargaining tentative agreement that was ratified approximately 2 weeks ago. On Tuesday of last week, we allowed for public comment. There were no public comments on that. So we move forward. That has been posted on our website 72 hours before, as is now the expectation. So I recommend the approval of the collective bargaining tentative agreement.
Why is the word tentative?
Until you approve that, it's not the actual collective bargaining agreement ratified contract.
So as soon as we approve it.
Then
Right now, it's tentatively agreed upon because it's up to you guys.
30 seconds from now, probably not.
I move we approve the tentative bargaining. Second.
It's been moved by Ken, seconded by Wes. Any other discussion? All in favor? Motion passes.
I
Oh,
recuse myself on my wife's,
Yeah,
everybody else.
And I do so on Mason.
Masons. There you go.
Then it would be,
Mason, not on that
You
one.
not on that?
okay, so it's 4.
He'll be on the next one.
Yes, 401.
401.
It's not an abstention, it's just 4-0.
He's right.
But Steve's recusing himself, right?
Yeah, that's different
Okay,
than
so
an
it's-
Yeah.
abstention. That's-
4-0 and then Steve recused himself. Okay.
Just a note, sorry, did we vote for that? We already voted? Did you ask for comment? Okay. Just to reply on that, I just want to thank Mrs. Shively, Mrs. Shauna Shively, Mrs. Jenny Mevis, and Stacy Kirk, who is the new UniServe director. That we met before the formal bargaining, which took approximately 45 minutes. Bargaining actually took about an hour. So to get to a place where we both agree and kind of the back and forth bargaining piece of that, our negotiations piece, it went very smoothly and was very cordial. So appreciate that.
I just want to say thanks to you guys for doing that. Some school corporations, it's not near as cordial.
I would agree with you.
Here, and it seems to go extremely well from I'm used to it, some of my past experiences. So thank you guys for working hard at that.
Yes, sir. Next, I recommend the approval of the administrator and director stipends, so very similar to the collective bargaining agreement. And Mr. Boyer, that is the one that, yeah, that'll be the one that likely you will not want to vote on.
So I move we approve those stipends.
Second.
Been moved by Steve, seconded by Wes. All in favor?
With the exception of Mason.
Okay.
I recuse myself on that.
You guys understand because they're relatives of the individual, they cannot vote on that,
Yes.
which is why they're recusing. Okay. Cool. All right. On to agenda item number 5. I recommend the approval of the 2021 budget as discussed last month.
I move we approve that.
Second.
Been moved by Steve, seconded by Kevin. Any,
Any comment,
No, 21 budget is built on, I think, 880 ADM, and that's what our count came in exactly. So we should be right there. It'll cover the first 6 months, no problem, depending on what the state does with the tuition support come next biennium. You know, it may have to be adjusted, but we should be okay.
I just want to say thanks for working on that, Tom. Appreciate that very much. You do a great job and makes our life really easy.
Thank you. The state once you guys approve it, we'll submit it to the state. They'll work it, come back with cuts we gotta make, and we should expect a very similar tax rate as this year.
okay. Been moved by Steve, seconded by Kevin. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
All right, I recommend the approval of the appropriation reduction resolution.
I move we approve that reduction resolution. that's a good
Those
question.
rules don't know what it is
Yeah.
either.
As mentioned, when we submit the budget to the state and they work it and they come back with the, any reductions that they would have to make, technically would need to be board approved. This just gives me or
Allows
Jeremy the
permission.
authority to make those reductions.
Second.
And so you girls understand, we have to submit what we're approving tonight to the state. They run it through their magic formulas down there, and they say, we get all the money
Yeah.
we ask for, or they cut it in some places. Typically, they cut it, so we're approving that either Jeremy or Tom can go in and make the necessary cuts without having to come to us with all of this.
Typically, there's a cut of approximately $400,000.
$400,000 to $500,000.
So,
When the budget is built, I build the budget knowing,
based on that.
put our expenses $400,000 or $500,000 higher than what I think we're gonna
Tell
get.
them, don't tell them that.
Yeah,
They know.
Kind of like playing cards, you know?
Yeah, don't tip your hand.
Just watching this.
Oh, they know. They know. Everybody.
Okay, so do you girls understand? Alrighty. You guys understand? All right, so it's been moved by Steve, seconded by Wes. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
All right, and then recommend the approval of the contract with the Crossing National Incorporated. This, just for everybody's knowledge, is an alternative for students who may not be best in the traditional classroom, so to speak, a little bit more accountability. And so we are looking at that as an opportunity for some of these kiddos that may benefit from that.
You have anybody in there right now?
Currently, we are in conversations about 2 students possibly being part of that, but there needs to be an introduction, a visit, a tour, and just make sure that everybody's understanding exactly what the expectations are for that. Have they followed through on that? One has?
One of the two is.
One, so one out of the 2 has Argus.
And they get, let's see, Crossing National gets the state funding, but
Yeah, there's a formula.
it's not the full amount.
It's not the full amount. I want to say it's like 95%. And then there's also a CTE component that some of the CTE dollars could possibly happen, but the current situation that we're in right now, CTE is not going to be an option unless proven that it can be effective. So we'll continue to monitor that. Typically in the years past, the reason the Crossing hasn't been a viable option for a lot of people is the fact is you had to buy 5 seats, whether you were going to use them or not. Now you can buy a seat for a kid, and if we get to a point where we feel like it's best for them to come back and be back into our population, we can make that move. There's also some accountability pieces to that, as far as if they go and they show good standing and they continue to show that it's in their best interest to be there, they continue to move forward with credits and that type of thing. We also take the accountability for that student. But if for some reason that doesn't work out, we do not have to take the accountability for the student. So I want to say it's a win-win. Honestly, it's best for the student right now to say the alternative might be expulsion, right? And so they can continue with those credits. They can continue to work for graduation, to where the alternative would have to be homebound and possibly a loss of a year's instruction. You want to add to that? Okay. Oh, okay. Nate will fill in the pieces on that.
Did I move, Damon?
You can, no one's
I
moved.
move we approve that.
Okay. The move by Steve, seconded by Ken. All in favor? Motion passes.
I recommend the approval of the COVID FMLA leave days for family. There was a request, just so we all know what we're voting on here, there was a request that under the current circumstance, that if a teacher's child is quarantined because of possibly being a close contact, that the teacher, if they have to be out because it's not directly affecting them or directly affecting their child, they would actually only receive 66% of their day, not necessarily their pay. So, splitting hairs on that. So they would only receive 66% of their pay. It would be considered a full day, right? So what we did is we simply said, obviously we want our most highly trained staff in the classroom if they can find said babysitter, if they can find childcare. So what we're doing here is simply saying that we would incentivize them in some way, shape, or form to allow them to be in the classroom to get that extra 33% of that pay, so they would get paid a full day for that. Now, if they have enough sick days, the only time that would happen is if they don't have enough sick days to take it. If they have enough sick days, what they would do is use a sick day, and they would get 100% of their pay for that sick day. But we're in a situation right now where we have a younger staff. We've had staff members take maternity leaves and or use up a lot of their sick days, so they may only have 5 or 6 sick days left, but yet they still have a young child at home. Now their child is quarantined, and they have to figure out who's going to take care of that little one. So if they do, they can essentially make that up by working every other day, or they can take a half a sick day to recoup that extra 33%. We're not splitting hairs with the 33% of a sick day, because in our master contract, it says all days have to be taken in half-day increments. So it's a very pro-teacher decision to say, how can we, especially for those that are dependent on that salary and or are going to have a difficult time finding childcare, especially if their child is a close contact and it's usually grandparents that watch them and they don't want to take that risk. It gives them a little bit of an incentive to say, we're not going to leave you hanging with 66% of your pay.
Does this apply to all employees?
Yes. However, that if they are affected, okay, so this particular one is really only a small sliver of people, the ones that don't have a lot of sick days, right? And or have small children, right? All the other ones, if they are quarantined and we tell them you have to stay home, automatically through the COVID relief, they get 100% of their pay, right? So you can see it's a very small percentage that essentially their kid is going to be quarantined, not really affected, but they're going to be considered a close contact. So they're not sick, so to speak, nor is the staff member sick, so to speak. But they are allowed to, and we've run this by Tim Shelley. They call it stacking. And especially under this current situation that we're in, he said it's lawful and okay. And so we decided to make a pro-teacher recommendation on that.
Has the association been involved?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. In fact, they are the ones that asked, is this even possible? And so we really wanted to make sure that it was, first of all, lawful, and then second of all, make sure that we weren't going to get into a situation to where we couldn't go back, or agree to something that wasn't in everybody's best interest. And or, Mr. Boyer, I have a feeling the reason you ask is we don't want that taken advantage of, right? Or maybe that wasn't the reason you asked, but our initial response to that is we always have to be careful of, there's always somebody possibly wanting to take advantage of a situation for their good. And we felt like it was such a small percentage of people that it affected that we would be okay. And the FMLA is only 10 days, so it's capped, right? So it can't go on and on and on because I was quarantined 12 times, and obviously it creates a crazy situation that we're in, but.
No, I think my question was more, is this just for teachers, or does it apply to?
It'd be everybody.
It'd be everybody. I'm sorry, yeah.
Yep.
And girls, Tim Shelley is our legal counsel. When they said
Our school
Tim
lawyer.
Shelley, it's our legal counsel.
He comes to some of our boys' basketball games.
Yeah.
If you want to meet him, just call him Intermission. He's a good guy. He is. He tries to make it. He tries to make it.
He comes to a couple every year.
I saw him there once.
Comes to a couple every year.
Maybe more.
Okay, I will entertain a motion to accept the COVID FMLA leave for the family.
So moved.
Second.
The move by Kevin, seconded by Steve, because I heard it first. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
All right, last but not least, I recommend the approval of the instructional day waiver request. As described in my email to you guys last week, is simply as we have become accustomed to with the performance standard counting our year in minutes instead of days. It just allows us a little bit more flexibility. We have approximately 5,000 more instructional minutes than is required, just based on the length of our days and how that works with busing and all of that stuff. Don't get any ideas, guys. But it does allow some flexibility with some of those makeup days. It does allow some flexibility with professional development. It does allow some flexibility with weather days. If it's close, do we go, do we not? We're more inclined with that flexibility to say, you know what, we need to take ultimate precaution because in the end we don't have to make this day up. So it does allow some flexibility there.
Will this change our end date?
We'll see if that gets approved. As you know, the last time we've sent in the waiver because of our 2-week delay, it was not approved. I will tell you, we've received direction from Dr. McCormick's second in commands to send these in ASAP for some of that flexibility pieces, just knowing that we're in the situation that we're in, with the possibility that a very similar request to ours has already been approved. So our hope would be that that would happen, but we're not guaranteed that. I would look at when we end our year and or what we would do with some of those built-in makeup days that we've already talked about and how we would be a little bit maybe more flexible with that.
All right.
So moved, we approve that.
Second.
Been moved by Steve, seconded by Wes. All in favor? Motion passes 5-0.
All right, so sticking close to the core values, continuous improvement. Tomorrow we'll be having professional development at the high school. Mr. McCann, I'm not trying to steal your thunder here, so you want to tell me to stop?
You go right ahead.
You going to talk about that? All right. And parent-teacher conferences at the elementary school, we'll seek to continue to improve our students' progress, and we'll seek to continue to communicate the areas that have shown improvement with our parents at the elementary level when it comes to parent-teacher conferences. The junior-senior high school staff will invite State Police Officer Dave Caswell and Ian Hurst. Dave Caswell will talk about the growing trends among our youth when it comes to just what do we need to be aware of as those people that are trying to provide wise counsel to them and or things that we need to be aware of. And Ian Hurst will once again train our staff on the human trafficking training that's due every 2 years. We're a little bit before that 2 years is up, but it just provided an opportunity to bring him in. I will tell you that you probably saw a newspaper article was written about us putting some posters up and that type of thing. Quite frankly, guys, anybody that says human trafficking is not happening in Marshall County is not correct. So it is happening. Is it hard to find? Yes. Do people understand it real well? No. But it is definitely something that we need to be more aware of. How do we look for it? How do we ask the right questions to make sure that we're not being naive to our young ladies and those that may be caught in that scenario. Also with continuous improvement, I want to congratulate Annie Hill, Jocelyn Faulkner, Brandon Kitch, Tyler Gladio for making it to the making it out of the Manchester sectional and becoming a regional qualifier. Congratulations to our 7th grade volleyball team on winning the HNAC Conference Championship. Congratulations to Miss Delaney Miller, Emma Hepler, Jayla Faulkner, Jalen Bulis, Lexia Hostrauser, all of which are joining us today. For being named to the Indiana High School Volleyball Coaches Association Academic All-State Honor Roll for the 2020 volleyball season. Congratulations. I didn't know you guys were coming, so that kind of worked out really well. Yeah. Shared leadership. Last Saturday, we successfully held an auction for the contents of the old gym. Many people were able to attend, and the stories could be heard of individual experiences within the structure. I want to thank Bruce, Brian, Terry, Tom, Daryl Ball, Lana Ball, and the ball auction team for walking through this series of events with us and helping us maximize the impact and result of this auction for our community. Our intent the entire time, as you guys were part of some of those conversations, was to get to last Saturday with a united front as far as what we could not remove, what we could sell, what we could not sell. And I think Mr. Ball, as we expected, did a very, very nice job and has respect from our community and was able to do a really nice job at that. So those of you that were in attendance, it was a success. We knew from the get-go there was not going to be money made, so to speak. It was simply to make sure that our community was able to get some of the pieces that they felt they wanted to have. So yeah, so I appreciate that. I want to thank Justina Faulkner, as I already mentioned, just stepping in for Joe White for the cross-country team, and that's shared leadership. She saw a need, she was there, she helped out. Social responsibility, junior, senior high school, senior squad was able to serve on Thursday of last week off campus at Operation Quiet Comfort. This trip was last Thursday, as I mentioned. Mr. McCann, Mr. McIntyre, Mrs. Arvison went to that and served right alongside the senior squad members, and it proved to be successful and will bless the military men and women with a Christmas treat in the coming months. Marshall County Prosecutor Mr. Nelson Chipman was in attendance today to hear Nathan Harmon. Nelson is sponsoring Becky Savage from the 525 Foundation when she comes on November 18th to tell her story to our student body, and hopes to continue to help them understand their choices definitely do impact others. So I think the ladies would agree with me that today's convocation was outstanding. Nathan Harmon, I said his name wrong to begin the whole thing. It was great. I've apologized and he forgave me. He said he's been called worse. But just an amazing story and a real tribute to somebody who made mistakes. And he's come back from those mistakes to impact the world. And he's doing that, and I think he made an impact on us today. I know I can speak for myself that he did, let alone the fact is of thinking to sit and listen to that as a 16, 17, 18-year-old, and or even my sons who were in that audience today as 13-year-olds to say, you know what, these are some of the things that might be coming my way, and I need to understand that I'm not going to compromise, which was his message today. Accountability, transparency, accountability, hard work, making good choices, and valuing people are the 5 key things that Nathan talked about today, and I think it was apparent in the accountability piece. He credited those things for getting him back on track. I think it was a reminder to staff and our scholars that we all need to have someone to help steady our ladder and help us climb to be our better and best. So he gave the example today of he brought a couple different people up to the ladder and essentially helped stabilize the ladder so he could essentially get to the top. And what he used as the top, or said was the top, was his goals, his dreams, his aspirations, but he couldn't get there if somebody didn't steady that ladder for him. And just made the point that you tell me who your friends are, I'll tell you who you are. And essentially, do you have those pillars, so to speak, of those people that you can go to in tough times? Even gave a little bit of a lesson with Josh Lemler today as far as he tried to run. He tried to get away from the people that were holding him accountable. And essentially what he said is they didn't make choices for him and they didn't help him do this or do that. But what they did is they allowed him not to run away and make those choices on his own. So just a timely message, and it was outstanding. So kind of even when it is tough, even when we get tired, Triton teachers, so I associated that with our students, but then also with our staff right now. Even though we're getting tired and it's tough, teachers are working hard to make a difference. And so we all have that realm or that sphere of influence. He talked a little bit about that, and I know we've shared that a lot of what are we doing with that sphere of influence. And we are the ones that are in control of our actions, attitudes, and our behaviors. And he really hit on that in his own words, which were so much more powerful just simply because he had been through so many different things, including incarceration, including addiction, including a person dying in the car as he was driving. I mean, so just trauma experiences that he could have said, you know what, life is horrible and I'm done. He just stuck with it. High expectation. I'm excited about it, guys. I loved it. So high expectations. Because of these high expectations, we have once again been chosen as a host football and volleyball site for the upcoming sectional. I think that's a tribute to a well-run athletic program and a quality event staff. A huge thank you to the office staff, Mrs. Davis, Mrs. Stetzel, Mr. McIntyre, Mr. McCann, Mrs. Lindsay, and all the others who will assist to make this a safe and pleasurable experience for those who begin to attend on Thursday evening, when our volleyball girls are going to do awesome stuff. Evidence-based decision-making, I want to thank our food service department as we continue to transition to hot meals. We talked a little bit about the extension of the summer food program and how that's impacted our students. We have had an increase in both breakfast and lunches, so making sure that our kids' bellies are full so they can learn and be their best has been a really good thing. And so that will continue through the end of the year. All lunch accounts that have money in them right now, the money will stay in there until it's needed later on. Alignment, as it relates to alignment across the system, we continue to speak the same language as it relates to expectations. So just talking about the Trojan Pride, the Trojan Way. The administrative team, leadership teams continue to strive in this turbulent time that we're currently in. Staff is working hard to meet the needs of both digital and in-person learners. Support staff can be seen diligently making their area as efficient as it can possibly be, and I want to commend everyone for the continued dedication, service, and grit that they continue to show in this week leading up to a much-deserved fall break. So they deserve it. Our kids deserve it. Our kids have been awesome, and I stated that to them today just by working with us on a lot of different things that, quite frankly, are inconvenient. Oftentimes, safety is inconvenient. A couple other notes I want to make, worthy notes. The old gym auction was a success, as we already mentioned. I spoke to Dave Jackson just yesterday just to confirm that they will be raising the old gym on October 21st. So it's maybe a little bit later than we thought. We thought it might be Friday or Saturday, but based on his schedule right now where he's at, that'll be on the 21st. And he said it'll be taken care of that day, and then the rest will be sorting, organizing, and filling. Last but not least, our thoughts and prayers go out to the Scott family who had a house fire in Etna Green this morning. 3 of their 4 children attend Triton, a kindergartner, 2nd grader, and 5th grader. If anybody's interested in helping the Scotts, I know that Jordan Ickes from the Etna Green Church of Christ and the Triton Elementary office will be accepting donations to help that family. I know that there's probably a GoFundMe out there as well, I think I read. But if you want that to be a safe donation and just kind of know where that's going, we will accumulate those, both Jordan at the Etna Green Church of Christ and at the elementary office per Christine. Mrs. Cook, excuse me. And then one last item, I'm just making you aware of Title IX is something that is high on the priority list as it relates to policy right now, and it's something, Mrs. Barnhart, you and I will be working through. If you, well, maybe not. Ryan Snoddy, last time he was here, talked a little bit about that maybe coming down the pike. So the new Title IX regulations are just talking about sexual harassment in the workplace. So normally when you think of Title IX, you think of, do we have the same amount of sports for boys and girls, right? Or do we offer equal opportunities? This is kind of taking that next leap into what Title IX looks like. And we will be coming up with both a Title IX coordinator, an investigator, a decision maker. And then we will also be probably will end up being our attorney or a school board member, so I'll be talking to you guys more about this as this becomes more clear, for an appeals process. So if a student or a staff member would claim sexual harassment in some way, shape, or form, we need to have somebody and make it public who that person is that they would go to make that complaint. So that is coming down the pike. Excuse me, there are very specific requirements. There are about 25 pages worth of policy on that. And part of that reason there's so many pages on the policy on that is simply because they don't want you to do it wrong. So in the past, they have not had the step-by-step process. Now they have the step-by-step process that you cannot essentially blow off. You cannot say, we can't be indifferent on that type of a claim anymore. And this policy is going to allow us to take those steps necessary to make sure that we do that properly. Any questions? Sorry, that's patrons.
For patrons' comments, anything online?
Are there any plans to
That is a good question. I don't think we have currently had any of those conversations. I know that that was currently at the junior high level, so we would have to have that conversation. So I don't know that that's been had.
Yeah, because the 8th graders now would have started it back in elementary, so they would be the ones, the first group that started it and would have
Sure.
pushed all the way through. So.
Sure. Yep. So we will. I will check on that, and we will seek some guidance on that.
Any more questions? No. Do you girls have questions? Now's your time to ask.
Yeah, so you might have said, but I missed it. What is the collective bargaining tentative agreement?
So every year, teachers have a contract, right? To say they have to work so many days, they get paid so much based on the days that they work, right? So every year you go back to the table, sometimes within a biennium, which is a 2-year period of time, a 2-year budget cycle, you're actually allowed to do a 2-year contract. We have not done that for a long time simply because what you do is you come to the table with the teachers union, and essentially you have conversations about an increase in salary, an increase in insurance, an increase in language. For example, you guys leave at 2:35 on Fridays, right? Or you guys leave a little bit later, right? I'm thinking elementary. But so that was actually bargained a few years back because what it did, it actually allowed us to have an extra day of professional development. So I guess the whole premise of that is obviously the teachers union wants to make sure teachers are not taken advantage of. That's the purpose of a union, so to speak. And then obviously our stance on that is what monies do we have available to give? What can we afford to give and still be sustainable and fiscally responsible? So it's just it's a bargaining back and forth of what is the raise going to be for the year.
And it's not tentative anymore.
Yeah, it's not tentative.
So now that becomes a collective bargaining agreement. So in there, they know what their starting salary is, where they're at on kind of the salary continuum, what they'll get paid if they're a basketball coach, what they'll get paid if they're a robotics coach, so on and so forth. Benefits, insurances. So it just makes all of that very clear, so I can't make special deals with a teacher because we like them or because they're a coach. We can't do something different than what that collective bargaining agreement says.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so when you guys mentioned you got like counting the minutes instead of the days, you said you have to submit that for approval. Is that to the state or?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So they have an accountability office that you have to send your calendar in because they make sure that you have 180 days on that calendar. So we'll send it to a specific, Brenda Earps is her name, and she'll look that over to say, does it fit Indiana code? Does it fit expectations as far as federal guidelines, as far as how many days you have to have and so on? And so, yeah, we'll submit that to the state and they'll quickly reply yay or nay. So.
And then you said that we have 5,000 more minutes than we need. So
Yeah. I told you not to use that against me.
I was wondering, like, when we get to the end of the school year and we haven't used all of the makeup and snow days, do we get days dropped off of the school?
So the waiver may allow that, okay? But that's not the intention of the waiver, okay? The intention of the waiver is a little bit more flexibility to say when we do have that snow day, or when we have 6 snow days, like maybe we did 3 years ago, that we don't have to go to the middle of June. And for you guys, a lot of you guys, is we don't have to move graduation again, right? And so that was always the problem before, and because we were a performance standard school before, we were allowed to use minutes. So the last 2 school years, we have not gone 180 days because we were able to use the minutes instead of the days, right? We've done that for the last 3 years. Yeah. Yeah. So if you go back, there technically, if we would have had to go 180 days, we would have gone longer and or would not have taken some of those built-in days off, so to speak. Right? So, right.
So when we do have the snow days,
Oh, here we go. Here we go. No, you're fine.
will we be using like
So currently we will, right? So currently we will because we have the opportunity now to go digital, right? And because of that 2-week delay, what we had to do is we had to make those built-in makeup days of school, right? So we've already come out to say we're going to go on this date, and this date because those were the built-in days, right? So we didn't have to once again go to the middle of June. If this comes about, we may have more flexibility with that to maybe not have to do the digital Saturday days. Now that's going to be something new for our corporation. So you'll actually have from Thursday, it's not Saturday school, so don't start that rumor. So, yeah, so you'll actually have from Friday when that day is posted, right? If any of you guys have gone digital, you would see the day is asynchronous, so it's the day after. Right? So the teacher teaches it, the person that's digital is actually getting that instruction the next day instead of the day of, right? So what would happen is from Friday until Wednesday, you would have the opportunity to both watch that digitally and or make up that assignment to make sure that we can count that day as a day of instruction. And once again, the reason we did that, okay, is because we don't want to continue to add days to the end of the year, right? And so it's not Saturday school, but the Saturday would be designated as that day.
We saw all of your eyes when you said Saturday go.
I get it.
"Ooh."
I get it. I get it. So,
They're all good questions.
yeah, good job.
So now you want to come back next month to see if we were approved for what we had submit.
Stay tuned.
All right, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the elementary building report. That's you. And we have a really nice mic over here if you feel the need to use. I know.
So we held the walkathon the week of September 28th to promote fitness, fun, and healthy competition. But we did not do the fundraising part of it. We actually had leftover funds from last year, since we didn't get to use that money towards the towards field trips and things like that. So we awarded a boy and girl in each class with most laps and a boy and girl in each hallway as overall winners, and they received gift cards to Walmart. And then 2 classes received recognition for most laps. That was Mrs. Smith's first grade class and Mrs. Brosman's 5th grade class, and they got slushy parties for that. We just want to say thanks to Mr. Carpenter for motivating students and monitoring laps, and to the teachers that walked with their students. The SAT process, we started that a couple weeks ago for identifying students with needs and putting in supports for them. We just finished last week our math and ELA benchmarks for the first beginning of year assessment for them, and we'll do data analysis this Wednesday with grades 3 through 6. We did start with new assessments this year, Study Island, and then we're using the Wonders benchmarks as well. Lions Clubs from Bourbon and Etna Green donated dictionaries again to all our 3rd graders and distributed them on October 6th. The new grading period started today, and we went from 40 digital students to 15. We're down to 15 now, and we actually have 2 more returning in person after fall break. So we'll be down to 13. We do have parent-teacher conferences tomorrow, and those have all been scheduled virtually through Google Meet, and parents can either connect on their computer with video, or they can call in by phone for those. And we're hoping to meet with 100% of families with those options. And then I know that Mr. Riffle already mentioned the Scott family, but they're all in our building, and so we do have that fund. We're going to keep that open. We'll collect through Friday morning, and then we're going to get that money to them by the end of the day Friday. Okay. Any questions?
Is anybody home?
Not that I'm aware of. We got a call pretty early this morning. We were told everyone was okay, but I don't think I think it was a
I
total
don't believe
loss.
anybody was at the home when it happened
Yeah.
that we're aware of now.
Yeah. And our nurse, she did already collect, because she has those extra clothes already. So we pulled a bunch of clothes out of there because their aunt came and picked them up. So we sent that home with her as well. So
On the Etna Green Church of Christ Facebook page, they did mention the sizes. So I may share that with our people as well if they want to turn those in and or replenish if we've already given clothes.
Yep.
So I can share that.
Okay.
We'll move on to the high school. If you want to pass the mic.
Okay, so last Friday was the end of the first 9 weeks. So I feel real fortunate that we've made it this far, because I think a few months ago I don't think we saw that happening. So again, I feel really blessed with that. So today we started our second 9 weeks. Report cards for the first 9 weeks will go out this Friday. Digital students, Melissa talked about the digital students. So we actually had 5 students come back as we started the second 9 weeks. And that brings us down to, I believe it's 27 digital students. So I think we started in the upper 30s and we've seen that number drop. I do anticipate, just some of the conversations we've had with families, that number will continue to come down. I think especially when the report cards go out and people see what those grades were, I think we'll see that prompt that move. Just real quick on our guest speaker today, Nathan Harmon. Jeremy talked about that. I think initially my thought process was, having a focus on vaping, which I thought was a real timely message, considering what we've seen in the building, what we see with our youth. But I think that message turned into so much more today. I think he had a great story. I think he identified really well with our kids, and just had a great message. So I benefited from that. I think our kids did. I want to thank Jeremy and Sarah. I think they did a lot of legwork, and it's been taking place over the last few years to make this happen. So I appreciate their efforts on the behalf of our kids. So professional development, Jeremy touched on that, so I won't go into that. Let's see here. This week is homecoming week, so I feel really fortunate that we're able to have a homecoming week, because we didn't know if that would happen. I know we're going to have Spirit Days. Today was PJ Day, so we have other days planned this week. We will do the homecoming king and queen crowning at the football game Friday night. We will have a pep rally on Friday, and we will do everything we can, just like we did today, to social distance, physical distance, as we rephrased it today. But just do what we can to make that a safe event for this Friday for our kids. And then the last thing I just want to talk about is, just with me being new this year, I think, I bring some different experiences. I bring different perspective on some things. And I bring some difference in my philosophy. So I think as we've gone through this year, as we've kind of hit different situations, and maybe and we look at how we've handled those things in previous years, or if we look at the handbook and we take a look at just the procedures that we've tried to follow, or how the handbook says we should handle a situation, there's some philosophy differences, and I think that can cause some concern with the staff as we start having some difficult conversations. And I think that having conversations is a good thing, and I think it's forced us to have some of those conversations as we try and maybe marry what my philosophy is on certain things, and then maybe how we've done things here at Triton. But I think it's a good thing. And some examples, and I think Jeremy mentioned one of those to you guys, is, take attendance. We really promote attendance. We push attendance, try and hold kids accountable for coming to school. And then when you look at tardies, in the handbook it states once you get a certain number of tardies, we're going to now suspend you from school. That contradicts, everything that we're trying to promote. And I think that there's some things that we do that are a contradiction to what we tell kids what's important. So all I want to do is, as we go through the school year and in future years, is to take a look at those things and how can we do, answer the question of what's in the best interest of kids. So I just want us to have those conversations. So other examples might be, not allowing students to make up missing work if they were suspended from school for whatever reason, or if there was an unexcused absence. Because I think we really tell our kids, I'm assigning you this for a reason. This is really important for you to do. And then on the flip side of that, we say, but it's not important enough for you to get credit if you were an unexcused absence. So I just think we need to revisit some of those things and have conversation. Another example would be, missing work. And then Jeremy touched on the crossing. What do we do with a student that makes a mistake, and it's a big enough mistake that we're going to remove them from school? A couple of things you got to consider is that student's coming back at some point, and now they're just that much more behind. They become closer to being a statistic of dropping out of school. I don't think that's what we stand for. So what are we going to give that student to help them, be successful? Or are we just going to say, you know what, you got in trouble for, say, drugs, but now we're going to remove you from school so that you can probably get in even more trouble than what you already were in. So I just really appreciate, Jeremy, Mr. Riffle, just being open to the conversation of, what can we do to better serve these kids that might find them in some of those situations. And that's why we wanted to explore the crossing as an option for some of our kids. So I just hope that we continue to have these conversations of what's in the best interest of kids. And that's got to include our staff. They've got to be a part of the conversation. And I can have a philosophy, but it's also we've got to make it fit for Triton. And it's got to be what's best for Triton kids and our Triton school community. And I intend to do that with the conversations that we have as a staff. And then also including our school board in those conversations as we look at handbook and handbook changes. So just in my conversations with Mr. Riffle, just thought I would bring that to you guys to let you know that, some of those conversations are already taking place as a staff, and they're difficult, but I think they're very important because I think they help us get to what is best for kids. So I think that's all I have. Unless you guys have questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
So we've heard this about what's best for kids, and we're talking about attendance and tardies and expulsion. I would like to see that conversation expanded to include some of the philosophy we have on sports, and like, if these are your grades, then you're not going to do sports. Or, because a lot of times, sports can be the only way that some kids, that's the reason they're coming to school. May not be, that probably is not, it should not be the reason they're coming to school, but maybe it is. And I think some of the time, if you get a coach on board, you can keep a kid in school if you're not just going to kick him out. You can, I just would like to see that conversation expanded there and look at some of the things that we require now that aren't in the best interest or may not be in the best interest of kids. Just revisit that.
So on that, just on the exploring other options. So take vaping, for example. Right now, we suspend a kid for 2 days. We've kind of continued with that practice. And again, I believe that there's merit to that, but at the same time, I feel like we're also telling that student, now you're free for 2 days to vape as much as you want. I think we need to look at an educational component of that. Whether we continue with the suspensions or something different. So we work with the Bourbon Police Department, Officer Amsden here in town, and we're adding an educational component to that. Same with anyone that we find out or that we would catch with some sort of drugs. We're looking at an educational component to that. I think that's really important too. So I don't know. I think we're just going to continue to have those conversations. I think we're open to ideas, open to the thoughts of other individuals, and again, finding out what is best for kids.
I don't know the specific example that you're referring to, Mr. Miller, but I think it is important, and just know that the conversations are happening behind the scenes of what is that balance, right? Because I think a hard disciplinarian like my father would say, we'll make them pay for not being at school, right? Or make them pay for not getting their homework done, right? And we know that in today's society, sometimes that pushes a kid even further away to where how can we help them understand or help them learn something, but in the end, help them also understand that one mistake isn't going to ruin them for the rest of their life. And that 1 0 or that 2 zeros or that 3 zeros that they miss for an unexcused absence, when they get to the end of semester, does it really tell us how much they've learned in science? No, it tells us they were unexcused absence for 3 days. So just how can we marry that? How can we get to the middle of that to say we want to make sure we're not burying somebody for a mistake, but yet we're teaching responsibility. And I think part of those conversations are happening within senior squad of some of those conversations that were happening to say what are we going to be really, really tight on and what can we be a little bit looser on? Or what's your guys' philosophy of some of those things? And what are the students talking about when it comes to some of that stuff? And to say the animals are not going to run the zoo, right? I think everybody knows that. But in the end, if we forget to have conversations with our constituents, which are our kids, I think we're also going to be in trouble in that vein as well. So where does that marry? And I think part of that is relationship, right? Part of that is safety, just making sure that we can have those open, honest conversations to say, just because you bring it up doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get your way, but it sure does help us understand what your perspective is. And I feel like, can you guys confirm senior squad and just the fact is availability that I feel like we're having some of those conversations and or really senior squads before this have kind of set that tone to allow this one to be a little bit more open, honest, vulnerable, as we talked a little bit, transparent, so to speak, because I think we've been open to talk about anything and everything. But if we don't have a good answer to it, I think we need to go back to the drawing table and say, okay, guys, like, what's the philosophy on this? So we can talk more specifics on that, on what exactly that might look like. But I think right now the expectations is that we have higher expectations than what the state has when it comes to eligibility and those type of things, as far as allowing an F or not allowing an F. So some of those things are already outlined. So if there's some of those things, as we've discussed in the past, there probably hasn't been enough time spent on the handbook when it comes to really diving in to say, what's some of that language is from 15 years ago, right? And that's why our handbook continues to get thicker and thicker and it never gets smaller. So I think you're committed. I think we're committed to diving into that and saying what's important and maybe getting back to a little bit of the basics on that.
I think the word that I'm coming on from my mind right now is accountability for our students. How do we make them accountable at the same time not punish them so severely for their mistakes? I think personally I would like to see us continue to help hold kids accountable for their actions.
Sure.
To me, it doesn't teach them anything if we let them get away with something and give them credit when they come back and do it. There's got to be an accountability somehow, I think, in some of that. Now, maybe I'm a little old school because I'm not the oldest one here, am I?
I think even just having the mindset of you're going to do the work, because a lot of kids are just fine not doing the work, and the grade isn't necessarily a consequence for a lot of kids. So I think saying that it's important enough that I'm going to chase you down, track you down, force you to get it done. And I think we are having some conversations, just how can we put some teeth to that and hold those kids accountable. We've talked about the idea of an after-school study time where we have some staff members available for kids, and they can be referred by teachers, and we can work with the parents and say they need to be here because they're missing these assignments. And to me, that's the accountability piece. We're not going to let you be okay with saying, I'm just not going to do it. I'm just not going to get it done.
On one end, that zero can bury them. On the other end, they may be just okay with that zero. And so I think that's where, where do we marry that? Yeah.
The student will come and say, well, I'm going to get a D-, I'm not going to fail, so I don't care.
Yeah.
How do we get kids to care enough to do their best?
Well, how do we do that, guys?
I feel like it's something that you can't teach. It's a way of growing up. Personally, I was brought up in a family that you try your best, you earn the grades that you deserve, but if you struggle in some places, that C is fine. But they hold me to
It's your best.
expectations.
It's your best.
Yes.
And to ask, like you do need to ask.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying like dump on the kids, but it truly is up to yourself if you know you want to go somewhere and like you're the only person that can make it happen. People can't do the work for you.
I feel like there's resources, like I know that I can go to any of my teachers and I feel comfortable asking them questions, and I feel like Triton does a pretty good job of the resources and giving us options and extra credit, things like that. I think it really is.
Exactly. Just tonight I had to email a teacher because I was like, hey, I've been missing an assignment, but I did it. Can we please look at this? Of course.
They're
It
very
was a
understanding.
simple solution.
Yeah, they're very understanding.
And we have to be aware that some people will take advantage of that, to your point, right? Some people weren't raised in that home and it's not as important and maybe they don't have those dreams. But in the end, how do we motivate that? And honestly, I don't think the way we motivate that is to continue to push them away and tell them how bad they are, right? I think we talk about the relationship piece a lot. Now, granted, some of that comes with you guys might be held to a higher standard than somebody else. And I know that sounds inconsistent, right? But sometimes fair and consistent isn't necessarily the same for every kid, right? And I know that we're not going to try to make a huge gap in between that, but you know what? We may have to go track that down a little bit more with a kid who's not motivated compared to the one who says, I need to get this up because I want to get into college, or I want to do this career. So yeah, I think it's an age-old conversation. I think if somebody would have figured it out, it would have been easy and it would have probably already been in our handbook. Yeah, but I think the conversations with our kids just like that is just to say, you know what, I think our teachers do a pretty good job of giving us the benefit of the doubt and they are going to work with us. But you know what, there's going to be a point in time where they're like, enough's enough. We're at the end of the grading period. I can't give you an A for first grading period when we're in the third grading period, and so I think it's a fair conversation that we're working through with, just how can we continue to move that forward?
Just having conversation.
Fair.
Just having conversation and working with staff on that and trying to come to a solution that fits not only your philosophies, but also our community, like you said,
Sure.
and what we've been used to. And it's going to take some time probably to make us all feel comfortable with that change, but we just got to work on it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, some of those things you don't even think of till they come up, right? We don't know our differences until they raise their ugly head, and then it's the communication piece, which I think can solve a lot of the ills in our country, in our school corporation, in our relationships. But unfortunately, sometimes we forget how, as I think Emma just said, how easy that can be if we just have the conversation and take care of it. So awesome.
Are there any more? Yeah, wonderful comments. Are there any more comments online?
Just Connie, no more stated. It starts with relationships. We have to show that we value them and their education so they'll care about themselves.
Yes. Thank you, Connie.
I know that we do well in school, but we also address our teachers like have one-on-one conversation. But for those students that are struggling, they don't want to have that one-on-one conversation. But if the teacher can approach them in a way that makes them feel comfortable, I think that they'll be able to work something out where the student can be motivated to do that work in a timely fashion. So just having that conversation.
Treat others how you want to be treated.
Yep.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
Love, care, and serve each other. So you're exactly right. Connie hits it right on the head. It's relationships. Relationships and communication can solve a lot. Great job. Great job.
Thank you, ladies. If there's no other business, we'll move to adjourn at 8:03. Okay. Thank you, ladies, for coming.